Back in the studio.
Back again.
So we were talking on the way up here, just kind of like we're between the holidays, right? Just had Thanksgiving, Christmas is coming up. It's time you go back, you're with the family. Things are comfortable, you're home. And we were talking about like when you enter a creative space, you kind of want to capture that same feeling. You want to make a space where you can be yourself authentically, and your
Right.
performers, if you're directing or creating or devising, can be themselves authentically. So, what does home mean to you, like in the
Yeah.
creative space, in the rehearsal process, and so on?
I think it's like whatever makes you comfortable or how you are comfortable. I know like I'm thinking about that right now because I'm about to go back home and I'm going to try to be productive while I'm home as well too. And I also want to, there's a couple things I want to do that's creative, but like I'm like, okay, how do I create this space at home where there's going to be nothing but relaxation and family and friends around? But it's like for me personally, I think I have to be in an environment where there's like very little distractions around. And something I've really got onto more recently is putting on like just like lo-fi type music, but like no lyrics. I can't do lyrics. It's gonna distract me. Um, and then just D&D the phone and just work. And I think making that environment feels very comfortable for me, and that's what I plan on doing. What about you?
Nice. I think for me, it starts with music, actually,
Music.
which is really interesting. And we both do this in our classrooms as well. We let our
Mhm.
students, you know, chime in, create playlists for the classroom. And,
Right.
it usually leads to a funky mashup of music, but like everybody's bringing a dish to the table, so to
Hmm.
speak. So very much like Thanksgiving in that way. There's a piece of everybody there, which I think is a wonderful place to start. And like mood is uplifted by the presence of music,
Hmm. For
right?
sure.
I mean, like a nice beat will change your mood. You
Hmm.
were talking about that with lo-fi. Um, However, when you start with that, when you take that away and there's the absence of music, for
Hmm.
me, it feels like it brings the work into laser focus,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
And it's kind of like, okay, we've set the tone, we've set the energy, and now let's continue that energy and put the music to the side.
Yeah.
So that's very much a way as well. I think clear and defined roles as well is also like extremely useful in the creative
What
space,
do you mean?
right? Yeah. So when you enter a traditional rehearsal process, right? You've got your director,
Hmm.
your stage manager, your dramaturge, your actors, your understudies, and so on, right?
Right.
And it's not about looking at that um, in a hierarchy sense. It's about looking at that into an expectation sense where you know what everybody is providing
I see.
and bringing. And I think it's really important to communicate on that,
Hmm.
particularly when you're working with friends.
Yeah.
That way, there's like expectation set,
Yeah.
and it's like, this is what I'm providing, this is what you're providing. Now let's play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you care to explain how you created that environment for your solo show process?
Yeah. So I created a character playlist for Phil
Mm-hmm.
Mitchell, right? And so sort of deciding what that tone was for me, kind of for the piece, for the character, and so on. Also inviting friends into the rehearsal room was a part of
Nice.
that as well.
Hmm.
Where it was kind of like, hey, I want you to give me some notes and feedback, but I'm particularly looking at this section. So again, sort of defining a role a little bit, where it's
Hmm.
like I'm bringing you in because I want to entertain you a little bit, but at the same time, I would like your role in this moment to be my critic,
Yeah.
right? And I want you to focus on these specific areas that would be useful to me. So I feel like that's how I created that type of environment in my
Yeah.
solo show. Would you say you did a similar thing or had a different approach?
It was similar. I did not have a character playlist, but I did have a playlist for me during that time period, and I would go on 435, cut on a playlist, like to like stretch and just really like get loose, and then no shoes. I have on socks, but like just be in that space and just start creating, and that just made me feel like really comfortable and ready to go. Of course, I like play with the lights and like set the mood even with the lights sometimes, and then just got to working.
Yeah. Have you ever been in a space where you've had less to work with and you've had to kind of create home in different ways, right? So 435, just so people know, that is our functional multi-purpose lab,
Correct.
right? It's got amazing lighting and sound capabilities. Is where we both rehearsed our solo shows, and as far as like creating an environment, it's very easy to do in
Yeah.
a space like that. But if you go back, let's say our very first year, right, we were in an entirely different building.
Mhm.
We basically had two classrooms we could work in. One was a complete shoes off space
Mhm.
because it was like a springboarded floor,
Yeah.
and so I found that to be a difficult space to kind of work in and make my own. And sort of as I did more and more projects throughout that first year, I found ways to break in the space. But it was a challenge at first, when you're under just fluorescent classroom lights, it
Mhm.
just doesn't feel quite the same.
Yeah.
But maybe it doesn't have to.
It doesn't have to, no. But I definitely agree. I mean, now I kind of think we're like a little spoiled with all of the amenities we have in 435, our multi-purpose lab. But thinking about that time during being in that building and those classrooms, yeah, we just had to work what we had, but we did, and we still created good work. We had our composition class where we created new work almost every single week,
Hmm.
um, and it was very effective. Um, Sometimes we did site specific work where
Yep.
we created outside or around the building or wherever, things like that, and just really made it work. And I think it's really beneficial.
That's a really great point too with site specific
Site
work.
specific.
You have to find a way to let whatever space you choose inform the work you're creating, but you also have to make it work from a practical standpoint. I
Mhm.
don't know if you can sort of speak on if you even remember the site specific piece you did for our first composition class, but like what was that experience for you? And
The one we did outside in the snow.
yeah,
Yeah, that was
I
an
talk about it all the
experience.
time.
Yeah, that was a really good experience. I mean, the scene was these lovers who were on this bridge and they had to separate. So we were actually on a bridge in the snow
Over a river
over
too.
a
Yeah,
river.
so there was a wind chill
It
effect
was a
for sure. It
wind
was
chill. It was
crazy.
it was really cold outside, and it just made the scene feel more like I was there, like we were there, and it helped out a lot. And I think that was really dope. I would never forget that experience.
Yeah, I won't forget it as well, particularly because it was like 10 degrees
It was
outside.
cool.
But there was something to it because I remember that the director had a speaker out there to like do some sound effects, and I thought that was an interesting choice because there was so much just going on naturally. Like you could hear the wind, there were other people walking by and things like that, and so it was really fascinating. But I also did a site specific work where I use music as well, and it's sort of where is this revelation of sound gonna
Mhm.
come from? I did mine at the bottom of a stairwell,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I remember I was blocking it, and it was like awesome. I was having a great time, and then I was like, where am I gonna put the audience?
Yeah,
And I remember I had to like stuff y'all in the
I
corner
was an
of the
audience member.
stairwell. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it worked though. It
Yeah.
worked, and like now I'm thinking about all of our different site specific locations we had for camera acting this semester.
Yep, absolutely.
We filmed in the basement. We filmed in the green room. We filmed in the kitchenette. Of course, we used a sound stage. We used second floor lobby. But just making these environments to be what we need it to be, and just how we can use our creative mindsets to like make it come to life. It works.
Yeah. Is site specific work something you want to do more of in the future, or is it sort of I don't mind doing it once in a blue moon?
Probably more so once in a blue moon, but I wouldn't mind it though. I wouldn't mind it.
Yeah. Is there a particular play that comes to mind where you're like, oh, I'd like to direct this in, I don't know, an abandoned hospital or something like that?
If I had that answer, I would give it to you. No, that's a good question to think about though.
I would,
Episode 6, I got you.
okay, episode 6. Nice, nice, nice. I'll tell you just because I watched a couple of your students do a scene from it just now. I'd love to do Jake's Women by Neil Simon in a library.
Ooh, why
Yeah.
so?
Because Jake's a writer,
Hmm.
right? And so I think like being surrounded by other people's works,
Hmm.
right, is a really fascinating concept, but it's also an environment where you have to be ultra quiet
Hmm.
and mindful of the people around you.
That'd be nice.
And so I think, particularly with some of those more charged confrontational scenes between Jake and Maggie, Something about having to drop your voice and just keep it right here
Mm.
is really fascinating. So if there's any directors out there, I just gave you a wonderful free concept.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
take that. So I wanted to ask you and see like how are you currently feeling right now? It's December
Yep.
2024. We graduated in May
Mhm.
2025. About 5 months out, 5.5 months out to graduation. How you feeling like right now with where you are doing this grad school process slash about to step into the real world as a free agent?
Man, yeah, no, that word free agent keeps coming to mind. It's daunting and exciting
Mm-hmm.
at the same time. I feel more prepared and sure of myself than ever.
Nice.
At the same time, I'm not confusing that with like an overconfidence or a false
For sure.
confidence.
For sure.
It's just I'm getting my materials together. I have a range of approaches, and this next year is going to look a lot different than the
Mhm.
last 3 years have looked, and that's okay. But there's a part of me where it's use everything you've got right now.
Yeah.
I think about this logic of we're about to be in the fourth quarter,
Mm.
and you can do one of two things. You can take a knee or you can run up the score. And if you know me, you know what I'm about to do.
Yeah.
I'm not stopping
Going for
till I,
two.
I swap that tassel to the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I actually feel really good right now too. I know we have a little bit of a different experience considering that you've had a little bit of time to be out there in the real world and I haven't. But like I've been just thinking like, okay, now it's time. Like it's no more school. Like we're actually out there now, and I feel prepared. I feel prepared. I'm ready to use the tools that we have added to our bag since really undergrad days, but undergrad and mostly grad school, and really just apply them. It's all
Mhm.
about how you apply these tools. We have the tools, so it's like now, are you actually going to go out there and apply what you've learned?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we talked about that on our last episode with Alan a little bit, right? It's like school kind of gives you everything, but how much of it do you actually use out in the real world? And I got to tell you, there's been two really cool moments, and they both occurred at the same time of year. One was just last week for us, and the other one was this time a year ago. And this time a year ago, everyone in our cohort had to write their first draft of a new artistic statement for
Mhm.
themselves. And then we just came into class and read them out loud. Um, and there was something about that that kind of felt like a superhero putting on their suit for the first time. It's like, this is who I am,
Who I am exactly.
right? And then just this last week, we presented our professional websites,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And again, it's this process of really trying to capture your essence in a web page, in words, maybe some images, right? But
Yeah.
it's like it feels like a tall task, but when you achieve that, and I feel like you have a very distinct, clear and idea of who Jalen is, and I have a very clear and distinct idea of who Noah is, and I feel like we were successful in
I
that.
agree.
And there's something really empowering of being like, I did that,
Mhm.
and it doesn't feel cookie cutter, formulaic.
Mhm.
Maybe when you're building a website, you start with like the template Squarespace gives
Yeah.
you, but I look at both our websites and I don't I don't see template.
Right. That's
I see
good.
Jalen, I see Noah. You want
Yeah.
to talk about what that process was for you?
That's the most important thing is about like making this website personal to you because you know that's a website. It's all about you and your work and your experience and things like that. So whenever someone goes on that website, they want to not only see the work you've done, but also get a little sense of who you are as a person too. So I think that's like the most important thing. But yeah, like just creating, I was like, okay, of course I want to add all the stuff I've done. But I also want to put myself in a good light and you know, show me some pictures of me smiling, put some quotes that I live by, just things that I I truly follow every day, and then that'll give someone a good sense of me. I really have fun creating, and there's more things I want to add as I get more materials in and things like that. So I'm glad that was an assignment, you know, to make that website for class, and not now we have that, you know, that's really convenient.
Yeah, and it's interesting because yes, it was an assignment, but I feel like there's been so many things in our time here where it's like, yes, immediately in this moment, this is an assignment. But then I look at something like this as well, and I'm like, is this just an assignment or is this also an investment?
Oh, for sure.
And you know, I 100% feel you did that. Two things I want to ask you real quick to follow up. One, shameless plug, give us the website name, and then two, there's a slogan on your website, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's on every page, and if you can just drop
Nice.
that for us.
Yeah. So the slogan was developing my character, and the template gave me like a little space to add text if I wanted or not. And I was like, okay, what could I add right here? And I'm like, okay, I want to add something like short, but what do I have to say? And I'm like, I still feel like I'm developing my character. Like, it ties into that whole aspect of like, us being characters and things like that. But it's like we're developing every day, and we're going towards that path of greatness. But it's like you have to be developed there, and like I'm just developing that character. So I think that was really cool, and y'all like this, so that made me feel good. So I think that was pretty dope. And the website is jalen.carr@wixsites.com.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Want to plug yours?
Yeah. Officialnoahbennett.com.
Nice.
2 N's and 2 T's on Bennett.
2 N's and 2 T's. Yeah.
You'd be surprised. I got some students that still don't know how to spell my last name.
Yeah.
It happens.
You want to talk about your process and like what went into it, or what was like, okay, I need this, but like I don't need that, or like maybe this is too much, or maybe this is not enough?
Yeah. So I needed it to be weird.
Okay.
I needed it to be a little weird, right?
Interesting.
And so I know so many websites, the first page you pop on, it's a picture of the performer right away, which I think is a very strong way to start. Got no issue with that. And I was like, let me just start with something that people will immediately see and be like, oh, that's a little different.
Mhm.
And so there's a video that plays right when you get on the main page, and I'm going to be swapping that out, but something that still sort of captures the same energy, and it's just something to kind of be like, oh, this guy maybe isn't just one thing, right? And I think that was sort of the critique slash praise for the website. Was it's very clear on this website you can do a lot of different things, but I also don't know exactly what to do with you.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm still wrestling with. But I thought it was ultra critical on my like body of work page
Mhm.
to show the most out there projects I've done.
Yeah.
So I talk about Phil Mitchell a little bit. I talk about Jump Point. I talk about Till Death Do We Like and Subscribe.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I talk about Communion,
Yeah.
right? And there was sort of a cutting your darlings moment where I've done a lot of work over the years, and I had to just kind of say what speaks to my creative spirit the most,
Mhm.
not how many things can I cram on one page,
Yeah.
right? And same with my film and stage acting page is just, again, what do I really want to put forward
Mhm.
as opposed to just how many things can I put on there? Because I think we're at an interesting point where, yeah, you could fill up several pages with an acting resume, or you can have one really powerful page and
Yeah.
say, this is who I am. And I think my website achieves the same thing that my resume does, which is leads people to ask the question, hey, you tell me a little bit more about this?
Mhm.
And that was really the question that drove me throughout the creation process was, can you tell me a little bit more about you?
Yeah.
You got to leave a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one thing that you achieved really well on your website that I took away from it was that for me, knowing you these past 3 years, your website really showcased who you are and it gave a sense of personality really well. So I know for someone who does not know you at all, click on that website, they're going to get a good information about the work you do, but also who you are as a person. I think that's a really good thing to keep. So yeah.
I think yours does a very similar thing. There's like a polish to yours that I really enjoy because it's so clear the standard of excellence you hold yourself to just based on that website, based on that logo, based on developing my character,
Nice.
that tagline, and also just you get a sense of who Jalen is and where his heart's at. I think that it's a Theodore Roosevelt quote you have on
Yeah.
your website, right? Just the fact that you put that on there, I think, just kind of speaks to this is sort of what drives me, right?
Mhm.
You mind dropping that quote? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, it says believe in yourself and you're halfway there. So if you can believe that you can already do it, then you're literally halfway to the goal. I think that's pretty accurate. Like if same thing. If you think about the goatee sheet and the expectation. If your character doesn't expect to achieve the goal, then they're not going to pursue it. They're not going to achieve it. But if you expect that you can, if you believe that you can, then you're already halfway to that goal.
Yep. Yeah, and off that acronym you just dropped,
Goatee.
it comes from Robert Cohen's
Mhm.
Acting One book, which we use in our classrooms. And yeah, there's like a quote, I think it's from William H. Macy, where he's like, no one wants to root for a predetermined
I
loser,
remember that. Yeah.
right?
Really nice.
It's like you always got to have a sense of hope. in yourself as a performer, but even more so in our characters.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really wonderful takeaway. And um, it's interesting because the website, it's so personal and individual, and we've been developing that alongside a script for a play we've been writing
That is
as a
true.
cohort,
Yeah.
through a process called devising.
Mm-hmm.
Which, for people who don't know what devising is, could you sort of give your working definition of what devising is?
Yeah, had a conversation with someone who's like a biology major, you can say. I brought up the word devising to them, and they gave me a completely different definition of what they thought devising was. So I've learned that our definition of devising is slightly different. But for us, I would say it's a process among a group of people. It could be two, it could be eight, it could be 15 million, however many people you want, that come together to create something from scratch. And they have an idea, can have 50 million ideas, but it all comes together eventually to be one really strong piece. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is something you want to build off of that?
Yeah, well, just building off, that's that's part of what devising is. It's construction, deconstruction, construction,
Well,
deconstruction,
out of
and
that, yeah.
just that
Yeah.
cycle. Yeah. So
Process.
we just finished our script.
Yeah.
Um, we have been researching slash developing slash devising for a whole year
Mm-hmm.
a script now known as the Dog Project,
Mm-hmm.
right? We worked with some community partners, and we're going to be talking more about this because we'll be getting into the rehearsal process, right? We go
Yeah.
up in the spring. Um, but yeah, I think just like tying it all back together, right? We talked about how we create home in the rehearsal room, but there are times where you have to explore like what the opposite of home is. And my working definition of that is like what's alien to me, right? What feels different and outside my body versus what's here, what's home, what's comfortable, what's
Mm-hmm.
me. Um, has there been anything in this devising process that has sort of brought you outside your home, brought you outside your comfort zone? And what did you take away from that?
I think it's a little different, like having 8 different creative minds in the room and having all of these ideas all at one time versus whenever you're in a theatrical process, you have a director who handles all of that stuff, and as an actor you just kind of play your everybody has their part and you play your role.
Hmm.
But in this part we all have the role of actually giving really detailed like feedback into the process. So that was really different, being able to like, oh, I have an idea and I want to put this in there, and then someone comes and counter and it's like, oh, well, I think this is really good to do as well too, and it's like, oh, well, this person has an idea too, then it's like, I'll jump it up. But I think that experience was really good for me because moving forward, I know that I want to devise with more people, more groups. But it's like now I have that experience of working with 8 people. And now I feel I can work with 12 now, or I can for sure work with 4 or 3 or things like that. So that definitely took me out of that comfort zone of normally working by myself and being comfortable by myself, but now being able to share ideas and being able to let things go or things like that with that process.
Yeah, it's definitely a good process for communication and flexibility,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Um, I particularly enjoyed days. There would be days where we would rotate, letting different individuals lead the
Yeah.
class, and
Yeah.
you just had to give yourself fully to whatever they wanted to do. And like, maybe that's just sitting down in small groups and writing little scenes.
Mhm.
Maybe that's someone's day. I know when I led, I had everyone develop these mini projects, right? And it was like you could do it with just text.
Mhm.
You could do it with movement.
Mhm.
Um, there were a lot of different ways you could go about it, and then we got about 15 minutes to combine all those little things together and just
Yeah.
see what happened.
Yeah.
But we also had a day where we had to pretend to be wolves for like 40 minutes. You know what I mean? So it's like you learn different ways to write. It's
Yeah.
not always typing words on a page. Sometimes it's this process of writing with your body, right? And sometimes it's a process of, oh, I just have like a nugget of an idea up here
Mhm.
and a whole bunch of different people saying, oh, well, what if we tried this? And then what if we tried that? I mean, just the last time we met, for the month of December, we just threw a bunch of dog toys and flashlights and things in the middle of the room because we were experimenting with how are we going to represent dogs on stage,
Correct.
right? And it was really kind of interesting to see what got drummed up,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it was again a range of approaches. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's a great process for expanding your horizons a little bit
For
and just
sure.
sort of expanding the way you can approach writing something. And it's not always going to be a comfortable thing, but it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the day that one of the days I led, it was I had like I grabbed a bank of I don't know like 5 or 6 words that were just important to us in our script at that point in time. We had created these acronyms
Hmm.
on this whiteboard, and we both like shared what the acronyms were, and like that was really cool just to see what these two different groups came up with together for these acronyms, and like what we're using. I don't know, maybe not, but like it was just still fun just to see like what we can create with writing and things like that.
Yeah. You had another
Yeah,
question?
well, think about the process from part one, which was like meeting our community partners and doing like research and gaining information. And then think about part two, which is like the sitting down, table work, writing the script, things like that. And then part three, which we haven't got to yet, but we kind of have an idea of rehearsal. Would you say is your favorite part of that process from one, two, and three?
I really loved the research
I
process.
agree.
It was insanely informative.
Hmm.
We learned about prison dog training programs, which
Hmm.
is a whole world I didn't even know anything about.
Hmm.
And I was just so struck and moved by some people's stories. I mean, we did a combination of reading articles, watching documentaries, even interviewing a couple individuals who have
Hmm.
worked within those programs. And again, it's just like a whole ecosystem that I didn't know anything about. And I'm so uh, grateful for the opportunity to share what that ecosystem is and the benefit it has, not only on a macro level,
Hmm.
because ultimately someone gets a service dog, but on a micro level, how it changes some of the lives of the incarcerated individuals who work through this program and the sense of purpose they find in that. I just
Hmm.
found that to be incredibly moving. And I would have never known about that if it wasn't for the extensive research process up front,
For sure.
right? Because if we just jumped right into this and said, hey, we're making a show about service dogs, um, prior to this experience, I probably would have gone just, okay, people with service dogs and just
Hmm.
starting from there. But this got me to dig much, much deeper. And I kind of realized how much goes into a service dog. So it's been really eye opening. And I just loved, oh my God, we'd be crushing like, I feel like 3 or 4 like sources of information a week. It was
Oh,
a
for sure,
lot.
for sure.
And just seeing what jumped out to everybody was really fascinating. What about you?
Oh, definitely that first part, that getting the research and just meeting those partners, actually going out there to the field and like seeing with our own eyes and experiencing and things like that. Talking to all the people over Zoom, like all of that was very insightful. And we were doing that at the same time we were doing our solo shows.
Hmm.
So as I was doing my solo show, I used that same mindset to go like outside of just Googling things about, what my solo show was about, to actually go and interview people and things like that. Like I actually attended a Heartbroken Anonymous meeting to gain information, and it was just really insightful and things like that. And I also talked to like 5 or 6 different like family members and friends who've like experienced heartbreak and like just really gained that insightful information, which really benefited the piece later on. So like that's a process that I'm gonna keep going forward. Is like taking a good amount of time to doing the research before we actually get to the table work, for sure.
Yeah, and it leads to such an interesting discussion on the ethics of storytelling, balancing that with the liberties you're allowed to take as an
Hmm.
individual. I don't know if you remember when we were studying some solo performers, there was this guy, Mike Daisy, and he kind of got into some hot water because he took some liberties. I think he was doing a piece about sweatshops,
There we
right?
go. Yeah,
And
me
he
too.
took some creative liberties with the piece, but because he had researched the piece as well,
Hmm.
people assumed that what he was presenting was 100% fact.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's this interesting blend of like it's not only theater, but it's a dash of journalism because you want to do right by the people you're researching, the community you're representing, and I don't think that's something that we take lightly, and in fact, I think it's something that we wear with a lot of pride. Like I know I'm really looking forward to sharing this piece because I can speak for the role I'm playing.
Hmm.
The uh, individual that I'm portraying, kind of a loose version of, an inspired version of, they're gonna be there at
Right.
the show,
Hmm.
and that's something I take a lot of pride in. But I'm also like, wow, what a massive responsibility to get this right.
Responsibility. Hmm.
Which is why I think something like Phil Mitchell comes so easily for me
Hmm.
in a different direction, because it's like, all right, this is more composite.
Yeah.
This is a
Yeah.
compilation
For
of
sure.
ideas and characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It must be a good experience and just having that mindset of like, okay, this person is going to be there, and they're going to be making their internal thoughts and things like that. But that word responsibility is really good. And something else I'm thinking about is like with any devising process or anytime you're creating any type of production, I always think about why are we creating this piece and why are we creating this piece right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm getting ready to submit a script. Obviously, this is something we've been talking about, you and
Right.
I, because we're hoping to work on it together. But yeah, anytime you submit a script, a responsible and thoughtful organization will ask you, why do we need this script today?
Hmm. Hmm.
And if you can't answer that, then you really do need to go back to the drawing board,
Yeah.
or just evaluate like what that initial idea was and what it was about that excited you
Hmm.
in the creation process. And it's so interesting because I think when you first start acting, you get that bug when you make like 500 people laugh for the
Hmm.
first time. It's a feeling that can't really be replicated by many other things, right? But it's about you. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, I did that,
Hmm.
right? But now, kind of as we're no longer budding artists, but really kind of maturing and defining our voices, it's about, what is my responsibility to these other people, to audiences. It becomes about them and less about yourself.
Hmm.
And you were just sort of the conduit for this offering. And I think there's something really lovely about that. And I think it gets me to not be so hard on myself in a perfectionism standpoint, right? Because
Yeah.
did you ever do a play when you were younger where it's like, oh, the playwright's coming to town or something like that, or the
I have not had that experience. Actually, no. I'm lying. I have had that experience. Yes, my spring semester freshman year undergrad. Yes.
yeah, and the thought process, correct me if I'm wrong, is, oh, I hope they think I'm good,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas like I was just talking about this show we'll be doing in the spring, and it's not, oh, I hope he thinks I do a good job performing. It's
Mm.
just, um, I hope he knows that this performance and this piece was handled with care, and he gets that feeling as well.
Yeah, and having the feeling of like I hope you understand that I'm truly trying to tell this story as honest and as thorough as possible for sure.
Because, and I think this ties it all together, because as the performer telling a inspired version of someone else's story, I'm a guest in their home,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
I'm a guest in their home, and you want to be a courteous guest.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I like that.
cool.
Okay.
I think that's a great place to leave it. You got
Uh,
anything else you want to tell the people for the holidays?
man, I would say just continue to work hard. Continue to work hard
Hmm.
because if you don't work hard, you're letting yourself down. You're letting that person down. That's just the future version of you, which is that better version of you that you won't get to if you don't get there yourself. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, that makes 100%
Gotta play it
sense.
back and
And I think even looking beyond Christmas, right? There's this notion of New Year's, new year, new me. It doesn't have to be a new you, because it's like, yeah, you can tear it all down and start over again. And there's something to be said for doing that every now and then in your life. But I think there's also just something to taking your flaws, taking your lessons, and just being like, actually, how do we just build forward?
hmm.
So I don't look at it as a restart or a reset. I think it's just a continuation.